Welcome to the latest edition of Cageside Speaks. My name is 14 Fitzpatrick, and for this wonderful summer edition of Cageside Speaks, we are going to be talking about something that blindsided us over the last week or so by WWE. Thanks, Vince.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about the return of something that has not been active in several years, the brand split. We also added the Extreme Men to the title because we'll probably be talking a little bit about Extreme Rules, which we were originally supposed to talk about. And we've brought together a group of Cagesiders to talk about this latest development in the world of WWE. First up is returning, first time since the summer, Haruki.
Holla, holla, holla.
Also joining us is Von Krieger, adjusting his hair.
Yes, I am.
And the
Getting the AJ Styles look.
Yes. Yes. Actually, you pull it off a lot better than AJ does, Vaughn. Also joining us is the general manager of Cageside Speaks himself, Kevin Turney.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm going to be taking the break today moderating, and I'm going to let Fizz handle it.
And you are doing a phenomenal job so far, boss man. And finally joining us on this edition of Cageside Speak is our newest edition, Chris.
Hello, Crazy Chris 576, and we are 4 days away from my NXT Championship Prediction Contest title defense in the CSS fan post thread. I'm taking all comers and hoping to win so that I can then secure the main roster prediction contest title as well and run with both of them away into the sunset.
He's the Ultimo Dragon of CSS fan posts. Give him all the titles.
Yes. Let's hope that Samoa Joe wins it for you, buddy.
I'm hoping so. I put him for like every single answer on the thread there for the match with Balor. So we'll see what happens.
So our first.
Who's going to win the women's title, Samoa Joe?
Yeah.
Better than Asuka. Hot take.
Oh God!
Oh.
You've incited the rage of the forum already.
Okay, so our first of the questions is, what is your overall thought on the brand split? And Bossman, let's start off with you.
I think it is a jolt in the arm to a very stale product. There's a very good chance, I'd even say maybe a 2/3 chance this fails. But there's a 1 in 3 chance this works out pretty good, and I'm willing to take those odds. The product has been very stale lately. They need something to shake it up. On that account alone, I love this idea.
See, normally you got a 50-50 chance of being a good show, but then you take in... Yeah. No simpy.
No simpy?
No simpy.
Why?
So what are your thoughts, Vaughn?
It depends on how seriously they take this, because if they do what they did last time, and if they just rape SmackDown to death and make it all raw all the time, Raw is the only thing that's important, it's gonna go over like a lead balloon. But if they actually maintain parity between the two shows and actually treat them both like an A show, they actually might be able to do something with this. And my main hope is that they stick with the old guard creative type stuff on one show, and they do the more NXT Triple H book style NXT stuff on the other one.
Well, I'm not sure that the NXT style is going to necessarily work on SmackDown, seeing as we're beginning to see the flaws of the Triple H style in NXT right now. So,
well, actually, couldn't disagree stronger. I think you're seeing the holes of some of the talent, but the actual build to TakeOver, whether or not you want to see these matches, they've done as good of a job as they can to make you want to see it. I mean, you look at Finn Balor and Samoa Joe. That's a very, very stale match. It's been a very nice build to a very stale match. And so I think I still think the principles of NXT's booking can translate to the main roster.
Sure, they can. It's just they need to be a bit more careful about it than they have been recently. Their over-reliance on hype is beginning to really hurt them.
Yeah, and the
Just
other
like-
problem there is that in NXT, they've suffered from the same thing that they were doing in the build-up to Payback and Extreme Rules, where your focus is entirely on one feud, and then the rest of them are getting completely lost in the shuffle. They've barely done anything to make us invested in the NXT tag title rematch, and the women's championship is a little bit of an investment, but I don't think it's enough to really counteract the fact that we're looking at an extremely experienced performer in Asuka versus an extremely green performer in Nia Jax, and how that's going to work is still very...
Well, Bailey managed to get a decent match out of her, so...
Yeah,
We'll
but
see.
I don't know.
I think also a problem with NXT right now is that as a whole, it's a fairly thin roster. And a lot of the guys that they have still in kind of the developmental stages. I managed to go to the one day at the Arnold Classic where they kind of showed off a lot of like greener-ish guys. And a lot of the guys they have down there aren't going to be TV ready, in my opinion, for quite a little while. A lot of like bodybuilder types, just big guys. And so as a whole right now, the number of seasoned performers that they can reasonably throw out on TV is a fairly small number. So as a result now we're seeing, after the exodus of talent that they had, they're kind of relying on, we talked about, just a small group of guys, and in some cases we're seeing it over and over again.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you there. So, Chris, what is...
But again, it's not as bad as what WWE does, because Dolph Ziggler wrestles one guy every 3 months.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you there. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on the brand split?
I'm with Vaughn on this one. I mean, granted, they have been, for as long as I've been watching, been making SmackDown the B show, and they've pretty much made it blatant without actually coming out and saying it. That SmackDown is not nearly as valued as Raw, based on the fact that we haven't gotten John Cena appearances, we haven't gotten Authority appearances. There's
the fact that every main event is a tag team match between four singles wrestlers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's been clear that SmackDown is the B show for the longest time. Even if you're very new to tuning in. So I think that if they can manage to make it such that SmackDown is its own distinct show and has its own identity apart from Raw, they'll succeed in this. But it's also going to come down to the storytelling side of things, and if they're able to inject more feuds and more advanced storytelling into the roster as a whole. The splitting up the talent is a good thing, and making sure that the same wrestlers aren't facing each other twice a week and giving us stale matchups is a good thing. But if they're only running, 2 or 3 feuds across both shows with consistent storytelling, then it's really not going to be an effective use of the split of the talents. They need to be telling 2 or 3 storylines per show that are going to be consistent and enjoyable to watch, if not more.
Essentially what you're saying is that they need storylines that are basically going to be only TV for several weeks, and then you also have to build around pay-per-view matches.
Right. And I think also, telling stories that are going to be worthwhile to watch and keeping them fresh. I hate to say this because I know that there are going to be people who are going to be like, "You hate fun" in the comments, but if I have to see another Golden Truth segment, I'm going to throw my TV out the window. I'm so done with that angle. It's been going for so many months now, and Goldust and R-Truth deserve better as veterans of the company. I mean, if they were going to make them a tag team, they should have done it after Mania and ran with it for a little while and then let the angle die. It's not funny anymore. It's not, and I don't want to watch it anymore. That's not a fresh story, and it's not an enjoyable story, at least for me, anymore. Giving us
poor dude. Poor dude.
Giving us feuds that are between performers that we don't get to see a lot, who deserve screen time, would be a nice thing.
That would be indeed a nice thing. So, Haruki, what are you excited? Are you excited about the brand split?
Well, I suppose it's like I think Kevin said, it's an injection into the arm, and that's really what needs or what interests me the most about all of this. Definitely took me by surprise. I feel like it's a little out of left field, especially with the overall tanking ratings that they've been seeing on TV. And also because, relatively speaking, the main roster is a little bit thin right now, even with the guys coming back from injury. The group that I actually think it helps the most is the women. Because right now on Raw, there's only one thing that the women really have to fight for, and they get 1 or 2 segments per show. So instead of having just Charlotte faces Natty, Becky Lynch and Paige take a back seat, you can have Charlotte faces Becky Lynch on Raw, and you can have different stories that are going on SmackDown. I think with the men, it was always that there was different things that they could fight for, so they could float around from different areas. But with them, it wasn't so as much. So I think they're the group that gets the biggest boost from this.
You can actually have the women's division centered around the actual women who are in it as well.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, the biggest problem that you have right now with the women's division is that for some reason all of these freak injuries have started happening, and every time that they try to push somebody, they end up getting hurt. It's like, did they wrestle on top of an Indian burial ground or something and got cursed?
The ancient voodoo curse of Papa Shango is back for the women's division.
Or Tatanka cursed them this time. Because it can't all be Papa Shango for whatever this amount of voodoo that has been happening on the main roster.
Why not?
Speaking of people, does this help or hurt? Let's bring on to our next subject. Person who is very divided in the Cageside Seats community. One Mr. Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever your thoughts on him, this scenario is intriguing to those not the largest fans of him. Let's talk different scenarios for how a brand split helps or hurts him, and we'll start with Roman Reigns' well, I'm not sure. Kevin, would you be his biggest critic at this point? Kevin?
Uh-oh.
I think we may have lost Kevin. Vaughn, we'll go with you first.
Sorry, what?
Does this help or hurt Roman Reigns?
Well, honestly, it could go either way, but the thing is that they seem absolutely dead set on making him the guy. As a babyface type. It looked like they were trying to turn him a little bit heely for a while and playing with that, but they brought Seth Rollins back, fired up the heel-meter on him, and now Roman Reigns is defending his title against the guy who cheap-shotted him and so on and so forth and broke up the Shield and blah, 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 blah. And now after teasing will he, won't he with AJ, they're going right back to the bland old babyface act again, and well, okay. If you're going to do that, at least now we're going to have an alternative on the other show where he's not, where we can watch somebody else being the big main event focus.
Okay, Haruki, so what are your thoughts on this? Does this help or hurt Roman Reigns?
Okay, so hopping right off of where Vaughn was going with that, because there's now going to be an alternative on the other show where people can go and see it, I think it hurts Roman Reigns because no longer is he just going to be the guy. If I don't want to put however many, it's going to be like 5 hours of live Raw into my live wrestling, WWE wrestling into my life per week. So if I'm choosing between Raw or SmackDown, I'm going to be saying, well, I don't want to listen to Roman Reigns babble on and on and on about being the guy. I have another main event type person that I can watch, another full-fledged show that I can put my attention to. So I think in general it hurts because regardless of how well he's received, all this exposure that Roman's getting, all this stuff over time builds to his mystique. You know, a lot of us weren't happy with Seth Rollins' title run when it was going on last year, but when he came back this year, he was a big star, and that was a massive pop that he got. So for as long as Roman is the guy, the exposure really helps him. But now that we have this other show, which has its own guy, I think as a whole, kind of like that mystique per se of him goes away.
Okay, Chris, what are your thoughts on Roman Reigns?
Oh boy. Well, I'll come right out. And if everybody doesn't follow the threads, I am a big fan of Roman, unashamed and completely behind him 100%, regardless of what they're doing.
You're entranced by his luscious hair, aren't you?
Why is it always so wet? No, the thing that I am most intrigued by at this point, and one of the reasons why I'm kind of not frustrated by, but just unsure of why people are still saying this. They've kept the narrative going that he had during his feud with AJ consistent, of him, just being completely detached from the reactions he's getting, just not caring, and maintaining the stance that whatever you say about me, I'm still the guy on top, and I'm still going to be the guy on top no matter what, and I don't care who they send against me, I'm still going to win because I'm the best. And that, to me, does not signal a babyface narrative. That still continues the tweener stance that they had him in during the feud with AJ, and I'm confused as to, why that's kind of being ignored. I mean, that was the thing that I took away from that awful segment that they did on Raw between Roman and Seth. I ignored the whole Seth running back and forth to the ring doing wind sprints thing because that was just idiotic. I chose to focus instead on what Roman said in his in-ring promo, of that, it doesn't matter that Seth is back, I'm still the guy, no matter what you think about me, and I'm going to continue to be the guy. And Seth, if you want to try and do something about that, come on out. That narrative is consistent with what he was doing with AJ. It's consistent with when Anderson and Gallows got involved. So I don't view it as they're pushing him right back into babyface territory. I think they're going to keep the narrative going with him being a tweener to some degree, and then maybe it'll expand a little bit more after Money in the Bank. That's what my belief is. I'm taking the kind of wait and see stance at this point.
Interesting. Kevin, you back?
You guys hear me now?
Yep. Okay, what are your thoughts on Roman Reigns? Does this brand split help or hurt him?
Before I answer that, I want to just give a little bit of explanation to Chris. In regards to what he said about the consistency of Roman, I don't think the consistency of Roman is really the problem. I think the crowd just really, 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 really wanted Seth Rollins as a babyface.
Oh no, I agree with that.
And when it was clear that they didn't want him, he's not getting a babyface turn, and then when he went out of his way to try to make the crowd hate him even more, the crowd just completely turned on the angle, and then you got the boring chants.
I don't like the way that they did that either, and I think that they should have brought Rollins back as a babyface. That was my expectation all along, but I still believe that there's a chance that will happen. It's just that they need to finish out the storyline of that. Seth lost the title as a chicken shit heel, and he's coming back, and there should be no reason for him to change his alignment from the time of his injury. That's my belief, at least.
Yeah, I think it's just I think there's a good story there that nobody wants to read. And sometimes you just can't make people do that. Now, in regards to the brand split, I actually think this could help Roman. He's got a very big problem with some of the fans right now, especially adult males. Now, they're not going to be two completely distinct audiences, but right now all the pressure in the world is on him, and he's getting the job done in the ring, but he's not making inroads with that group. If you give anybody else in the brand split over on SmackDown a better push and show that they are being treated prominently, that doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden like Roman, but that means they're going to like other things about the show, and that'll give him time to improve his game and, most importantly, try to figure out how to mollify some of those objections. So I think without all the cameras won't be on Roman during the brand split, and this will give him a chance to try something fresh. And so I think it'll help him in the future.
You're starting to sound like one of those garden shows or a produce salesman. because we're mentioning the word fresh all the time. I think that this will honestly help Roman, and I'm excited for it. We'll see how it goes.
Either a produce salesman or a women's hygiene commercial.
Oh boy.
Okay,
we are not great people for that, Vaughn. We are not.
So, speaking of the person that we need to talk about next that I'm really, really dreading about talking about because I have had him out of my mind for months and was perfectly happy with that, does this brand split help or hurt Seth
John Cena!
Very timely drop in there, Krieger.
Damn it! I have that as a sound clip on my phone. I wish I had that queued up. That was amazing.
Now, we know that John's going to be clearly the brand face of SmackDown, but does this help or hurt Seth Rollins, seeing as he's going to be the 1B to Roman's 1A on Raw, it looks like?
I think that again, and this is a time will tell thing. This is going to be a wait and see matter. The storyline, like I just said to Kevin, the storyline that Seth got injured as a heel and is now coming back as a heel is something that nobody wants to hear, but needs to be acknowledged because that is, like it or not, the proper storyline progression. And whether or not people want to acknowledge that or not, that is the correct way to proceed with this. I criticize WWE all the time for having absolutely no long-term memory in their storytelling. This is a case where they are displaying some long-term memory, and I appreciate that, and I like that about this angle. So I think it's going to require a little bit of finesse, though, because of the fact that Rollins' championship run just damaged his credibility so much for the first half of it never being able to win a match without outside assistance, and then once he finally did stop getting outside assistance, it still was a case of that he was barely winning matches most of the time.
Well, the thing is that comes back from injury, immediately starts healing it up again. I don't think they've ever. I can only remember exactly one time that they've done that before, but it wasn't with an injury. It was with Jericho coming back, and it was when he decided to heal it up in 5 minutes by never talking and just running around the ring and just being silent, letting the crowd cheer him and basking in the cheers. But I can't remember the last time WWE had a guy come off injury and just threw him out there as a heel again. They didn't give him time to do the welcome back. Yay, you're back for the thing for the crowd. I mean, they did what? They did an hour special on him coming back.
In the most babyface manner possible, I might add.
Yeah, that was a little bit weird. The timing of that was not well done.
Yeah, to me, this kind of feels like yet another one of those Vince rewriting things at the last minute, having no concept of things, just no long-term planning, just what do we want to do now
well, in this case, I think Vince realized
progresses our goals for the moment.
Yeah. I think in this case, Vince thinks that this documentary is going to be on the network, so not a lot of people are going to see it, and it's only going to be on the network, so there's...
Which is ironic considering how much they shill the network on the show and want people to subscribe to it as much as they possibly can, and also bring up the number of network subscribers in all of their financial reports, too.
Yeah.
So isn't it like they somewhere, but last I checked, it was somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million subscribers?
Yeah, they were like 1.8 at the last quarterly report, I believe.
How many people does Raw usually get? I think it's either high 2 millions, low 3s.
Yeah.
Right around 3.
Low 3 millions.
So it's like literally half their weekly audience subscribes to the network.
Sure, but the other half doesn't. So that's what Vince is thinking. He's thinking with the glass half full, glass half empty thought process that, they're going to boo him anyway because he was a fantastic heel last time. At least that's what the little Triple H...
I really highly highly doubt that. Because, I mean, people fucking cheered Triple H when he came back after exploding his quad that one time, and Triple H was basically the Antichrist.
Sure. And they decided to go with the exact opposite reaction this time because they thought things would be different, but nope.
I don't know if they necessarily thought things would be different because, I mean, they gave him that whole 5-minute monologue of, saying, "Did you guys miss me? Or aren't you glad that I came back?" before he started healing it up. So I think that was their, tacit acknowledgement that, yeah, people do miss Seth and people do want him to be back, but they
4 out
didn't
of the 5 people on this panel miss him and want him to come back.
I
Hiroki,
want him
what are your
back
thoughts?
as a babyface, not as a heel, but that's... Go ahead, Hiroki, sorry.
You're good. We're in a really interesting place, I think, with Rollins because he did have that very odd heel run, like even way past chicken shit heel. Just because I remember I looked up something. He actually had something somewhere in the top 10. It was like the 6th most losses of any guy on the WWE roster in 2015, and that was with him being champion for majority of the year. Just it's a really bizarre way of booking your champion. I know there's the chicken shit heel, but he goes way so far that. But now he comes back. He's got a lot of momentum. He hasn't been in a match yet, but he's going straight for Roman Reigns. So it's going to be interesting to see how they book that match and how they put him in the future. Now, whether the brand split helps or hurts him, I'm kind of indifferent on the whole thing. Call me when he turns babyface because everything in his skill set, the way that the moves that he has, the way he carries himself, the look, I feel like it's all really conducive to a top babyface. Mm-hmm. And going back to the match like the Shield Wyatt's match from the Elimination Chamber, Seth Rollins was absolute hot fire in that match. So once we can get that going, I think that's where he'll really just take off because he's right there in terms of being a star. But maybe just needs that one extra thing to push him over. So we'll see. In terms of the brand split, I'm kind of indifferent on how it affects him. I don't think it'll have too much effect one way or the other.
Okay, Kevin, so what are your thoughts on this?
I think it will affect him to the degree of he's...
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
No, Kevin.
Oh, my God, they killed Kevin.
Oh, dear.
You're bastards.
Oh, God. Talking about Seth Rollins has apparently caused Kevin's mics to crash.
Yeah, we don't know that.
Oh, dear. Okay, so, well, I guess I'll start off. Finish up the segment here, and when Kevin comes back, he can talk about it. I have expressed before, I am not a fan of Seth Rollins. He is one of 2 wrestlers who currently occupies my hate list, and I have a tier list of wrestlers that I like, dislike, indifferent to, and hate. And Rollins was the one person on this roster that I was not looking forward to coming back. I began hearing the rumblings and news on the Rumor Roundup that he was going to be coming back, and he came back on the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view and proceeded to use the pedigree on Roman, and then came back and did a 5-minute rambling promo that I decided to skip. And every other segment that I have that Seth has done, I have skipped because I had a bit of a rule of I was going to skip every single Seth Rollins segment that I could. There was only one Seth Rollins segment that I watched, which was him interacting with the New Day in a backstage segment. And I have been true to my word that I have been trying to stay away from Rollins because every time I see that man, my blood boils. And I generally feel like, what is he doing here? Why isn't he off in Ring of Honor? Why isn't he off getting squashed by Dave Mastiff and Big Damo in a handicap match in progress? Why is he here, of all places? Although I do want to give some credit and appreciation to the WWE merchandising team for apparently making Triple R canon. Because Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim is on the back of Rollins' new t-shirt. And I'm a bit appreciative of that.
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, but,
Yeah. But even they realize that this is going to be... Either this brand split is going to help Rollins, or it's going to expose more of his flaws. And him being on Raw will probably be a big mistake long term, because unlike Roman, the guy has got a lot of weaknesses. He can't play heel. He's Not a very good talker. He's good at doing babyface stuff, flips and stuff, but even that is sort of empty calories. So
Okay,
we'll see. Oh, yeah.
Real quick, I think you bring up a good point, and if we're going way retrospective back into all of this, one big problem that I have is that WWE, they just don't, in many cases, they don't seem to play to the character's strengths the most.
Yeah.
And going all the way back to when the Shield broke up, it was a shocking moment when Rollins was the one that turned, and in that sense, it was a success. But then after that, Rollins' skill set maybe isn't suited the best to being that top heel type, and they immediately pushed him into doing these 20-minute talking segments every week to open Raw, and it didn't really work after that. So
Yeah. Anybody remember legs between his legs? That was one of the worst. I mean,
20 minutes of pain and him misspelling the word inanimate. Kevin, you back?
I believe so. I don't really know what's going on here. Normally my stuff is pretty reliable, but apparently I'm having tech difficulties today. Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you great.
All right, so let me try and get my shit in real quick before I drop. When it comes to Seth, I think it matters is who his next opponent's going to be. That's the real problem, and who's over enough to be his next opponent.
Oh, wow.
Triple H.
But I don't think it's happening. I think they're moving away from that. I think Triple H Shane or something like along those lines. I do not see any reason that we're going to get Triple H and Seth Rollins. And so now that he's going to lose at both pay-per-views, what's next for him?
Well, I think that the fact that they've kind of taken that whole end of the authority thing and just kind of made it happen very quietly and not given it a major storyline is in some ways put Seth's future in uncertain ground right now. I will say I was one of the people who, upon his return, I was not indifferent, but I was not the most excited for it because I wasn't sure what they were going to do with him, and I wanted to see if they were going to give him something that was going to be suited to the kind of in-ring style that he has and the kind of the kind of work that he can do, and keeping him off the mic was one of the things I was hoping that they would do with him, but they haven't. So it's going to be difficult for them to give him a good next storyline without that ready-made end of the authority bit sitting there for them to run with.
Okay, so question 3. We'll move on to our next segment. Who should be the respective faces of each brand? And Vaughn, we'll start with you.
Well, probably. Well, they're basically. I'm absolutely positive they're going to make Roman Reigns the face of Raw. I don't think there's going to be anything other than Roman Reigns' mug with his blue contacts and his luscious locks plastered all over the red show. SmackDown, well, usually you build the show around the babyface, and that's probably going to be John Cena. But I really hope they don't do that, because even though he had a good year last year, where he was divorced from the entire title scene and focused on the U.S. title and having good matches.
I queued that way too fast.
I honestly would say if you want to make John Cena the face of your brand, take the 20-minute starting the show promo back and shoot it, and just have John fucking wrestle like we know he can.
I agree with you there. Kevin, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get my shit in as well here. I'm going to be Brian Cage for the rest of this podcast. In regards to...
You're a machine?
Yeah, I have no problem with John Cena being the top face right now, because who else is there? That's the problem. They really don't have anybody over. I mean, shit, their top face on Raw is not over, and SmackDown is basically the only place where you can put Cena. He is over. I mean, some people may have thought AJ Styles. I think AJ Styles is far better suited as a heel, especially with the Good Brothers of Gallows and Anderson. They're heels as well. they're very ideally positioned. I think what will be more interesting is who is the babyface in waiting on each show. Because there's always your top face, and then there's that other face you're kind of grooming for either in the future or in case of emergency break glass. Who's that going to be on Raw and SmackDown? I mean, I kind of guess maybe Sami Zayn, sorry Fizz, will be that babyface in waiting on one of those shows. I hope it's SmackDown because he'll be booked better probably, but who's going to be the face in waiting outside of Reigns and Cena? I think that's the most interesting question. And outside of Sami Zayn, I just don't know. I mean, Cesaro? I don't know.
I don't think the WWE brass has any faith in Cesaro, and I'm not sure if they do in Zayn either. With Cesaro, they always seem like, we'll kind of put him up. And to be honest with Cesaro, in the ring, he's so brilliant, but just he doesn't have that charisma. He doesn't really come off as the super, I don't know.
Swiss secret agent?
I thought that was a nice wrinkle, but as a whole, like, I remember I saw him live one time when he was injured. He came to the NXT thing, and he was trying to work the audience, and it was just, I wanted to love it so much, but he just kind of came off as awkward, and it was just kind of odd, and I just don't think that it's all there for him when it comes to being the complete full package.
I would agree with you there. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to do the John Cena clip there, but that obviously didn't work out on timing-wise. But I think given the choice of Cena being the face of one of the shows is the right call because he is the most proven draw in the company. I was surprised initially that it was SmackDown, but given the desire for SmackDown's ratings to get pushed, that makes more sense to me now, so I'm fine with that. Having said that, the way that they have it set up with Raw right now is this really is more reflective of the fact that the fact that they 50-50 booked 95% of the roster into oblivion is just going to end up killing them in the long run. I don't think that there is a possible person to be a face in terms of like face-heel alignment, that there is someone who can be a top face on Raw in the traditional sense of the term, because we've established the fact that Roman's character is going to end up being a tweener for the most part, or I like to call it the asshole face is what I like to call it, and that's something that I actually came up with after SummerSlam when the night after SummerSlam when Cena AA'd Jon Stewart. I just said, all right, well, Cena's now the asshole face, and that's I think is something that they should just take and run with, because having a face who's going to appeal to the kids and appeal to the crowd isn't something that necessarily is needed at this point anymore. You can have someone who is a face but just has a bad attitude. That's what Cena was for a good chunk of the second half of last year while he was still wrestling, and that's what I think they should do with Roman if they're going to have him be the top star. But in terms of who's like the hero of the show, who's going to display those hero tendencies, I don't know if there is anybody that they can put right into the spotlight in that role. Zayn is a person who could one day have that role. Apollo Crews is a person who one day could have that role, but they don't have anybody who's established enough to take that on right from the get-go. So I think that they're gonna have to run with it being Roman as tweener / face versus Seth as a heel, and eventually maybe somebody else like a Baron Corbin as a heel who can at least go toe-to-toe with Reigns in terms of power.
Thinking about it for a second, call me crazy, but I think if they established the authority on Raw and brought Bray Wyatt back from injury and cranked up his whole tear down the corporate machine image, I really think that they might be able to do something with that, with Bray as a babyface.
Oh yeah, actually, I didn't even think of that. That actually makes a ton of sense.
Okay.
Because he's supposed to come back next week. So, yeah. I mean, if they can manage to do that and have the Wyatt family be like the Avenging Angels in some way, that would be a hell of a storyline. I'd love to see that.
That'd be very interesting. My two picks thus far, I know Raw is going to be Roman Reigns' show, and I'm very happy about that, honestly. I mean, I'm happy for once that they're actually pushing the young guy as the top face of Raw, whether people like him or not. At least Tanya will be happy watching every Raw segment. So we know how much of a fan she is of Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
As far as SmackDown goes, we'll have to see with the draft, but I'm honestly hoping that Kevin Owens gets drafted to SmackDown because I think he could be a good face for SmackDown.
He could be an excellent face, but I think right now he's going to be slotted in as Reigns' next challenger or antagonist. Maybe not directly a challenger, but I think he's going to win Money in the Bank, and he's going to make Roman Reigns' life living hell with teasing cash-ins. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, at least if he does that, then things and stuff might like Roman Reigns more. Because she's been kind of neutral. Go ahead, Rookie.
I'm honestly worried about Kevin Owens because he's another guy that they have just like on that bubble between upper mid card and main event status, and you know that he's ready. You know that he can carry a program. You know that he's got all the intangibles that you're looking for in order to be a main event player, but I just don't know if they're willing to push him into the upper echelon level. I'm not sure if he'll win Money in the Bank. I wouldn't be surprised if they put it on a guy like Jericho as opposed to him, just because Jericho's a proven guy that can work a program and stuff like that, and because they always like to fall back on these old reliable type guys, and before that sounds too far-fetched, well, last year Sheamus won it. So I'm a little bit worried about it because Kevin Owens, you know he's got everything that you need to be that top guy, but are they willing to say, let's take this guy to the moon?
I'm actually thinking that they might, in a desire to push ratings through the roof right out of the gate with Money in the Bank, they might put the briefcase on Ambrose and give the whole tease of maybe there'll be a Shield triple threat for the title, randomly somewhere along the way, and try to use that as a hook to get people invested in things.
I think they're going to do that. I think they'll do that at WrestleMania.
Well, I think that the things that they've been doing lately show that they're very focused on short-term gain and reward versus long-term gain and reward. So I think that maybe putting the briefcase on Ambrose just to get people invested right now and then slow burn it up to Mania might be the right way to go about it, but who knows?
All right, so that actually perfectly segues us into the next segment. What concerns do you have about this brand split, and is there anything WWE can do to pacify them? Kevin, we'll start with you since your mic has decided to go demonic. Oh, it looks like he's muting his microphone again. Haruki?
So I suppose the biggest worry is that they don't get enough traction right off the bat, or they don't start with enough of a bang, and people just don't care. And before they even get a chance to have two A shows, live SmackDown just becomes a live B show. So that's the biggest worry for me. Also, are they going to have the well-developed stories that we're hoping that they do for the characters? Because if they do, then this is going to give a lot of the mid-card guys a chance to shine, but if not, there's not going to be that much of a reason to tune in. There's not that much of a reason to tune in. There's not that much of a reason to watch. There's not that much reason to watch this thing tanks. So I suppose the biggest thing that they can do to allay those fears is just try to provide quality shows off the bat. I agree with Kevin when he says that John Cena is the established draw that they need to be at the top of the card for that new flagship show. You know what you're going to get from Cena. You know that he's going to be a guy that can carry the program. So I think that would be the thing that would allay my fears the most.
And it appears the technical gremlins or the Aztec gods has affected Kevin once again.
Apparently. Which question are we at, guys?
What are your concerns about this, and is there anything WWE can do to alleviate them?
I think my concerns are they need to show discipline in their storytelling. I mean, you guys were talking about the Shield Money in the Bank angle. That's something they shouldn't hot dog, but they very well may because they think they can't wait, and they'll just blow things off without properly building to them. And I'm very worried about that. I mean, I think AJ and Cena, this could be a very interesting feud that you can mix up that could last for months, but is it just going to get blown off the minute the brand split happens? I think that's a real worry.
That's a possible worry there. Vaughn, what are your thoughts on this?
Like I was saying earlier, it depends really on how they handle things creatively, because originally with the original brand split, it started out good, and each show had its own distinct flavor. But then they took SmackDown out behind the woodshed and beat it to death with a Kevin Dunn flavored baseball bat, and just it had its own production style. It had its own storytelling style, and then they just made it raw light, and it sucked.
I don't know if I want to know what a Kevin Dunn flavor is. That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It tastes like toothpaste and dam building rodent.
Well,
Vivid description.
honestly, I honestly think that SmackDown lasted as long as it did. You know, I think the Paul Heyman era was a good era for SmackDown, and surprisingly enough, I think that the Greenfield era is even better for SmackDown. It's just that they didn't have a stable force writing it after Greenfield left, and that just came into the rut of, oh, it's now Raw Light. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
My concerns, I have, as excited as I am for the Brent split, I have a lot of concerns with the two that are like primary for me. The first one is the wave of NXT call-ups that is rumored to be happening. I think that we've already seen that this is a bad thing to do, to just knee-jerk bring a bunch of people up to the main roster without giving them the time to fully flesh out their characters and their skills in NXT. Giving those performers the time that they need to get ready for the main roster is crucial. And yeah, there are definitely some people who are ready. Bayley is ready. Samoa Joe is ready. Finn Balor is ready. Alexa Bliss is almost ready. Carmella is almost ready. There are definitely some people who could be brought up immediately that would benefit the main roster, but I think that bringing up a huge number of people will ultimately be to the detriment of both NXT and the main roster. So I think that maybe not bringing up as many people as they're rumored to be doing would be helpful right off the bat. The second thing really is the whole idea that SmackDown needs to develop its own identity, and I think that putting the Cena-Styles feud at the top will help that, but they can't just have the other feuds underneath that essentially be the same things that happen on Raw, just with different players. They need to be telling cohesive stories, because that's something that WWE has always been guilty of. They basically tell the same stories just with different people. You know, the prime case of that being the build-up to the IC title ladder matches between WrestleMania 31 and WrestleMania 32. Essentially the same story, just one was incredibly long and drawn out, the other one was told over the course of 2 weeks. So giving different cohesive storylines that play to the strength of the players involved in them will definitely help to alleviate those concerns for me.
It's all about balance. Balance is key in everything in life, and WWE needs balance when it comes to this brand split. It can't just be the same, well, we're going to do the AFC versus NFC, and it's going to be like football. We need to have, first, the two different identities thing. Raw is going to clearly be the show with the younger guys on it, and SmackDown is going to sort of be like the Craftsman Truck Series was to NASCAR, where you have older guys racing around in trucks and drawing people in because they're these drivers that are popular, but they're not good in the main series. So we'll see how SmackDown manages to handle and bring in its NXT call-ups, because there's going to be a lot more call-ups to NXT, and that actually brings us to our next point. What role will NXT play in all of this, especially since you, in light of what you have said, Chris, of Triple H right now is being very trollish about TakeOver, and admittedly the TakeOver title is the end. Does that mean that this is the end of TakeOver at the Cult of Full Sail, or does this mean that NXT is going to be getting repackaging? And Kevin, is your microphone working?
I don't know, is it?
Yes, it is.
Hey,
We'll go with you
all
first.
right. Let's get this in really quick. I honestly think that you're going to see, you will still see NXT. It's just going to be in a very different manner, to where by the end of the year, I think they're going to transfer out all of those big names. I don't think you're going to call them all up at once. I mean, you're not going to have the day after TakeOver, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, American Alpha, The Revival, all of these guys all show up on the main roster and go, hey, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see slowly but surely one guy a month or so be slowly rolled out, to where by the end of the year, NXT is sort of back to a true developmental territory.
And I think they're already starting to build the seeds to that with the Florida House Show loop, because Cageside has started posting the Florida House Show results, and they're bringing in a lot more people onto those shows, and they're also starting to branch them out onto the main NXT tour shows. And that will be very interesting to see how that goes. Vaughn, what is your thoughts on this?
Sorry, what?
What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, the NXT call-ups. Yeah. Well, it's excuse me. It's gonna. I honestly feel that if they're gonna continue treating NXT call-ups like they've been treating NXT call-ups, that don't even bother, because out of all the NXT call-ups in the last year or two, I think they've only bothered really developing Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, and they're basically a prepackaged deal with their rivalry from one another. I mean, they basically just toss out an NXT guy, go, here you go, it's a guy from NXT, look at him wrestle, and they did that with Neville. They've done that with Apollo Crews. Yeah, just about every NXT guy comes out of nowhere, gets very little development time, and within like 2 weeks, they basically forget about him, dump him in the mid card, and go tra-la-la off to the next guy. I don't really trust WWE to do anything important with NXT call-ups at the moment.
Okay, Haruki, what are your thoughts?
I'm 100% with Von Krieger in the sense that, you know, guys like Dash and Dawson are going to die 1,000 deaths when they get to the main roster. Because when you get from the NXT guys that you can forecast to be really successful, and wrestling in general, you don't have to be a great wrestler to be successful on the main roster. And I think Enzo's a great example of that. If you have a look and if you have charisma, that's what's going to take you places on the main roster. I think Carmella's going to be a star when she gets to the main roster, because her skill set and her profile is just 100% suited, I think, to being successful on the main roster. I think Alexa Bliss is another one.
Because she's hot as hell, and you can't teach that.
That's honestly part of it. But she's got that charisma that goes along with that, and she's got a flavor, and people are really going to latch on to that. Alexa Bliss maybe a step below that, but again, I think she's going to be extremely successful too.
I honestly think that you're underestimating Pixie Hulk, Karuki. You don't want to underestimate Pixie Hulk. She might get mad.
Yeah, this is true.
So if that's there your way.
Yeah, her character work has really been brilliant lately. But I think also in the topic of where Kevin was going, where the change that we'll see in NXT. Last year, the NXT's gone to the Arnold the past couple of years, and for both times I've been able to go down, and I've seen kind of like the new guys that they're grooming. Last year was a lot of these indie guys and a lot of the good wrestlers that they were showcasing, whereas this year it was a lot of raw talent and a lot of big guys. These weren't the indie. These guys were just big. These were the Vince McMahon loving, just big guys. The guys that challenged Dash and Dawson for the tag titles on the show were a group called the Protein Brothers, who are literally just two massive guys, and their gimmick is like they like protein. So it's going to be quite a change when guys like Dylan Miley and Tino Sabatelli, gosh, I can't even remember some of the other guys' names, Kishan Raptor, when these guys start coming up, it's going to be interesting to see the flavor that they bring, because it's not going to be the indie standouts, it's going to be big guys.
Is there anything wrong with that, though?
It'll be different. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. It'll be different.
Because I'll be honest, I want the big beefcake dudes. I mean, I love my indie wrestling, but like, I know Fizz understands this. What Progress is doing over in Britain right now, they're having an Atlas tournament. And it's nothing but a bunch of big, beefy hosses just beating the shit out of each other. It's beautiful. And I think that can work on the main roster if you train them good enough.
And I think Kevin here is like kind of underselling just how big these guys in Britain are. I assume that Dave Mastiff actually lifts tractors as part of his weight training, and Kevin has gone again. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to kind of counterpoint what Vaughn said by pointing back to WrestleMania and the women's match that happened at WrestleMania. 3 NXT call-ups who basically became the focus of the entire division for almost half of a year. Their entire program was focused around Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks, while the entire rest of the women's division, who were all seasoned veterans, was put into a giant tag team match on the pre-show, of all things. So I think that
kind of built up until, like, what was it, a week or two ago? They kind of built Charlotte around Ric Flair, though.
Yes, I will say that, yes, that is a problem, and that is something that I have gone on about ad nauseum, and I'm so glad that he's no longer in the picture, but the fact remains that the performers who were in the ring were still NXT call-ups. So, having said that...
Well, basically, no, the thing is, the entire program was basically a presentation for Charlotte. That's all it was. It's basically it's Randy Orton with tits is what it is. It's a guy who's
the views
done
and
a lot
opinions
for the
expressed
business of.
are not those of Cageside Speaks or their affiliates. Come on, now that legal disclaimer is out of the way.
I mean, yeah, the nepotism angle was going to get played, and I'm surprised that we didn't all see it coming, but of course that was going to happen. But suffice to say, I think that the NXT call-ups, if they are allowed the opportunity to present themselves and their skills to the audience that is likely mostly unfamiliar with them, give them a chance to be received well and give them a significant amount of time, you can slowly but surely begin to transition the main roster into a good mix of veteran talents that everybody knows and loves with the new NXT talents who they can slowly begin to get acclimated to and develop an appreciation for. I mean, look what happened when Apollo Crews debuted on the main roster. His matches against, granted they were against social outcasts, but that people were really enjoying him. People really had a great appreciation for what he could do in the ring. And if they had given him a feud that was actually going to, give him significant screen time like this upcoming one with Sheamus hopefully will do, there are people who are going to definitely get behind him and will lead to him getting a prominent place on the roster. And I think that can be done just as long as it's something that's done in a good balance of time, because you can't bring up 20 people at once and then give them all screen time. It's just not going to work. You have to kind of vary things up a bit so that people can get used to the performers one at a time and then eventually determine their stance on them. Of course, everybody latched on to Enzo and Cass right away because they were put in the forefront and they were allowed to showcase their skills. What do you think would have happened if they had done the same thing with Baron Corbin and put him into a high-profile feud and given him the chance to show him his disdain for everybody and everything below him? People would have gotten invested in his character and in the chance of him losing. So give them the time, give them the space that they need to tell their stories, and don't just relegate them to main event and superstars. And then I think NXT call-ups will be okay.
All right, can I get my quick point in that my audio cut off before, if I could, Fizz?
Sure.
What I was saying with Hiroki mentioning all those other guys, I think that will do some good. It needs a little variety. I don't like TNA, everybody looking like 2004 OVW. But at the same time, I like a little bit of variety. What Progress Wrestling is doing in England right now, they're having an Atlas tournament of the big guys. Since they're mostly small indie dudes, they're finding these 250, 300-pound guys, and they're having a tournament where they just beat the piss out of each other. It's so much fun to watch, but if I watched nothing but that, it probably wouldn't be as fun. the variety makes it more interesting. So if we get some of these big beefcake dudes, as long as they learn how to turn into semi-competent workers, you got some really fun hoss fights, and I think it would make everything better.
Yeah, Tucker Knight down in NXT is one of those guys who's going to be really good just as a giant beefcake guy coming up and just, swatting little dudes out of the air. Just like taking Heath Slater and throwing him out of the ring, out onto the ramp, like 10 feet up the ramp,
He can move, too.
Yeah.
He can move, yeah.
I mean, it will basically be like a throwback to the original WWF of the 1960s, 70s, if they go in that direction, and that's not a bad thing. I'm looking at all these old episodes of primetime wrestling from like the late 70s, early 80s, and there was so much variety on these cards. You've got small guys, you've got big guys, you've got your carpenters, you've got a wonderful eccentric mix of wrestlers, and if that brings back the variety into wrestling, I'm all for that. I think it will be good. It requires balance, and they're not thinking balance right now. They're thinking, what do we do to pacify the new USA Network, because they're starting to get kind of angry about SmackDown's ratings being bad. And they're going to be taking the metaphorical bat, irony of my avatar here, and they're going to start saying to Vince, no, this is not acceptable. And the one thing that Vince McMahon is afraid of, and there are very few things that Vince McMahon is afraid of, are TV networks, because he remembers the last time that he got canned from a network, and it was actually Saturday Night Main Event in 1991-92. NBC had an executive shakeup during that particular era, and the new executives went and saw this Sergeant Slaughter Iraqi sympathizer angle, and they said, nope, we're canceling your contract. Sorry. Better stuff luck elsewhere. So Vince actually had to temporarily move Saturday Night Main Event to Fox for the last year of its existence.
I don't know if Vince is actually all that concerned about the TV ratings anymore, though, because of the fact that they've been pushing the online media angle so hard. Like, the YouTube channel gets so much focus on the broadcast. They're always saying, oh, we've got more subscribers than all the other major sports networks combined and all these other things. It's like, I think that Vince might be a little bit more forward-thinking than we're giving him credit for in terms of how the broadcasts are going to take place down the line. Because, like it or not, broadcast TV is slowly going the way of the dinosaur. We are going to undoubtedly be watching things on the internet more than we are on television 5-10 years in the future. And I think that Vince may already be thinking ahead to that and how he's going to market the WWE when that becomes the norm rather than the exception. So I don't know if necessarily he's as worried about the SmackDown ratings in the long run. Yeah, he's putting Cena on the show to be the short-term solution, but I think in the long run he may be looking more ahead to how are we going to capitalize our YouTube channel and the broadcasts of the network online.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I think also Triple H and Stephanie are really focusing on that angle, and when the transition does happen, eventually, hopefully in the next decade or so, it will be very interesting to see how that transition goes. And let's talk a little bit about the tag division. How are they going to be affected in all of this? So we'll start with you, Hiriki.
Oh, the tag division. Wow. Okay, so I didn't see this question. God. Well, right now it's a thin division. So yeah, it's New Day, and there's no real credible challengers. I don't know who's going to be the one to take it off them, if it's Anderson and Gallows. I would say, if anything, probably hurts them a little bit. It de-emphasizes them because you can't really have this tag division split over two different shows. Although I think they did try that one. Regardless, I think it'll hurt them a little bit. But in the long run, the tag title scene has been kind of de-emphasized, and if they do try to do two distinct ones, I think it'll completely fail on whatever show doesn't have the New Day on them. And for the New Day, I don't really know where they go if they aren't the champs, to be honest with you. They can kind of make everything work, but if they put the belts on Anderson and Gallows, I don't know who challenges them after the New Day and where they go from there. So that was a little bit long-winded and kind of meandering, but...
That's okay. Vaughn, what are your thoughts on the tag division right now?
You mean the New Day and whoever is facing them division?
Yes.
WWE has really de-emphasized the tag team division these last few years. It's before it was the New Day. It's basically the Usos and whoever's facing the Usos this month. Honestly, I think they can stuff it in one show or the other and just keep the tag teams there, and nobody will bat an eye.
Okay, Chris, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, they did used to have the two distinct tag titles when it was the WWE Tag Team Championships and then the World Tag Team Championships, but going to two belts in the tag division as well is not gonna really help. Shaking up the division is definitely going to be a necessary thing, and I think that bringing up teams like American Alpha and the Revival from NXT will maybe do that, but it's tough because of the fact that it's basically, like Vaughn said, been New Day and whoever's facing them this month. They haven't really found a way to make it so that they can have multiple feuds going at once. I mean, yeah, they've got this whole Enzo and Cass versus the Dudleys thing going, and then Golden Truth versus Breezango, but that second one is just purely for comedy purposes, and I can't stand it, as I've said before. So I don't know how they're going to really make it work. What were you going to say?
Oh, now that I'm thinking about it, for the last, I don't know how long, WWE's kind of had a problem with their secondary divisions, where basically the only thing they do in the division is the title feud and basically fuck all with the rest.
Yeah.
It's honestly what they need to do is an emphasis on continuity and storylines throughout the card from the top to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
That basically they do what has been done on NXT and Lucha Underground, where everybody is a part of their own story, and feuds are rather when two stories overlap rather than the story itself.
Well, NXT's tag division has actually had the same problem for the past year or so that I've seen. I mean, it was who has the titles and who are they feuding with? I mean, that was what they did when Blake and Murphy had the titles. That was what they did with the Vaudevillains, and Vaudevillains lost the titles in their very first feud because the entire time of their title reign was overshadowed by the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. So the Vaudevillains title reign is basically completely inconsequential for their NXT Tag Team title, period. And then the Revival had it, and now American Alpha has it. So both the main roster and NXT right now are suffering from the fact that their tag divisions are not built very well for holding more than one storyline at a time. But having said that, I can see one glimmer of hope, and that is that Enzo and Cass can talk their way into making any feud seem significant. So I think that as long as you keep the New Day's feud separate from Enzo and Cass's feud, you can have legitimate tag team storylines running on both shows. That is going to require that those teams end up on separate shows, so we're not going to get the New Day versus Enzo and Cass feud that we've wanted with Enzo versus Xavier on the mic, but I think for the viability of the division, that's for the best.
I mean, you could basically have New Day and versus Enzo and Cass at WrestleMania, and have WrestleMania be the show where both brands fight against each other for whatever titles.
Yeah, that would be how that's going to have to work if you're going to keep the division fresh.
Okay, testing, Kevin, are you on?
1, 2, 3. Yep. I don't know what's going on today, but in regards to the tag division, yeah. I actually think I think they're just going to have the one set of titles, I hope, because they don't have enough tag teams to really split it out. But I think you're going to start over the next year, you're going to get there. I mean, you will have the Revival, you will have American Alpha, you will have Gallows and Anderson, you will have your lower card acts like Breezango and whatnot, you'll have the Usos who are just there, you have the New Day, you have Enzo and Cass. These are actually, you could do something with these feuds if you show the discipline, and that just goes back to my problem before. They don't show discipline.
I think, and I think that I don't think that those fears are unfounded, and I think they'll manifest themselves when a team like the Revival comes up. The Revival will follow, I think, the traditional tag team life-death cycle of they'll go up, they'll be good off their debut, they'll get a tag title shot, they'll lose, and then they'll be right down the card. I think the Revival has no hope on the main roster because it's just two guys. They don't have a ton of charisma. They're good in the ring, but they don't have anything that makes them
I don't know about that because that house show, they got over at that house show, and that, I mean, yes, you had Enzo and Cass and the Revival came out to crickets, and by the end of the match, they got over. So if you book the Revival as these sniveling heels who are out breaking people's legs, that's going to get over, and people are going to want to see them get their comeuppance, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's also, I think that the tag division could have revitalized itself a lot better at the beginning of last year, following WrestleMania, when there was the possibility of Harper and Rowan as a tag team, just tearing through the entire division, just breaking it all down. That Reapers tag team I thought was going to be incredible before Rowan had his injury. So I think that if they can put Gallows and Anderson in that position to be the team that just destroys the division, and then somebody comes along to kind of take them down, whether it be American Alpha or whether it be Enzo and Cass, or maybe even you do bring Harper and Rowan in as a face tag team to face Gallows and Anderson, so it's like a monsters versus monsters kind of thing. You could do that, and that might inject some new life into things.
I agree with you there. That is a very interesting idea. Whatever they do with the tag division is going to be very interesting to see where they go with this. Because I've said on past shows, I'm kind of tired of the New Day. I like Enzo and Cass. I think the Revival will do very well on the main roster, actually, because you have people who want to see the Revival on the main roster. Certainly Reverend Kane would like to see the Revival on the main roster because he loves that tag team.
Mm-hmm.
He loves how old school they are and that they break people's legs, which can bring in angles. They might be able to do a rehash angle with them and Enzo and Cass, or they could do it with one of the other tag teams. I think another sleeper team that we kind of overlooked is the Vaudevillains. Their main roster run so far has actually been better than their NXT run. And historically, statistically speaking, that is actually a positive sign. Because guys
Let's be real, their NXT run wasn't very good.
Like I said,
to say that they're better.
Yeah, their entire run with the titles was completely inconsequential, as I said.
The Vaudevillains were at their best in NXT when they were actually chasing, in my opinion, the Lucha Dragons, and you had all those skits and stuff, and they were very over with the crowd down there when they had the theme music where they did that. And it's odd because at certain times they almost seem to neuter the Vaudevillains' momentum, and then when they got the titles, the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic just took precedence, and that was the end of them.
I mean, Blue Pants got the better reception of the faces in their match at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. I was there, and like the Vaudevillains got cheered when they were coming in, but as soon as Alexa Bliss grabbed the microphone, the entire crowd just started chanting for Blue Pants, and that was the thing that they cared about more, that she was there rather than the Vaudevillains getting their title shot. They were just like, "Hey, we get more Blue Pants, woohoo!"
And Pixie Hulk, to the joy of us all, put Blue Pants on the clearance rack. Her t-shirts are on sale at WWE's shop right now for about $6.
Because she's never coming back.
I think Blue Pants' love of the booze put her on the clearance rack more than Alexa Bliss.
Sure, but in storyline she ended her.
Yeah.
That's where we're going with it.
There's one more tag team. There's one more tag team that we are all forgetting, and that is the best one of them all.
No way,
the
Shinsuke.
Shining Stars. The Shining Stars. Welcome to Puerto Rico, the shining star of the Caribbean.
No.
Can I leave Puerto Rico, please?
No, it's everywhere for some reason. It's the ring, it's everybody. It's also the other people in it.
I actually like the Shining Stars. I think that they might do well in this run. I like the fact that they are obnoxious tour guides, and my headcanon for them is basically that the Puerto Rican government found out about their bullfighting activities in Puerto Rico, and they were basically sentenced to community service. So and during that time in community service, they became insane due to all the tour guide stuff that they were doing. So now they have the words, "Welcome to Puerto Rico, the shining star of the Caribbean," integrated into their heads. So now they're going to
love them.
Yeah. So now they're bringing their obnoxious tour guide-ness to the main roster, and I love it. If they start doing skits where they're
Oh no.
Kevin,
we
you're
lost the
contagious.
Did we lose the moderator? Am I still here?
You're still
Yeah,
here.
Role reversal.
Vince, we lost you there for a minute.
So let's get our final thoughts here, and we'll close out. Starting off with Kevin, since his
No,
microphone is apparently.
I was kind of enjoying where that bizarre Shining Star story was going. You need to finish that.
Oh, that's it. They're insane tour guides.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize to everybody with the technical difficulties. Normally, mine is pretty good, but apparently we've been having some problems today. We'll make sure to get it fixed in time for the Cruiserweight Classic episode.
Did you borrow your microphone from Sin Cara?
Apparently. I mean, in the end, I'm still very optimistic about the brand split, at least for the first year. After that, it's a crapshoot, but I think it's going to be a very fun first year, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, Vaughn, what are your final thoughts?
I'm cautiously optimistic as well. I think they'll go full throttle right out of the gate and try to get this thing kicking on all cylinders and 7 other different car references. But if they're going to, I don't really trust WWE to do anything long term and stick with it. So if they manage to make this into a success, and if I like it, I will be happily surprised. And if it sucks, well, I'll have my smug sense of superiority.
Which I think you're already showing right now on camera.
Yep.
Okay, Haruki, what are your final thoughts?
At the end of the day, I'm excited about where it's going to go. I'm intrigued for the future, and that's all I can ask for with wrestling.
Okay, that's a really good point. Chris?
I will maintain a stance of cautious optimism at this point. I will say that if we can make it to WrestleMania 33 without this becoming a complete clusterfuck, then congratulations, WWE. You've successfully executed a brand split, and let's see how you continue with it after WrestleMania 33, because that's always the benchmark, is where we go after each WrestleMania.
Well, summer is my favorite season in wrestling because of all the unpredictability and new ideas that usually come through, because it's after WrestleMania. Let's think of something to do in the meantime. And the ideas that they have come up with thus far are some pretty solid ones. Styles is going after Cena and trying to be the top dog on SmackDown, it looks like. Gallows and Anderson are destroying everything in their path. The Miz has taken his IC title and gone to Hollywood, so that when he comes back, there might be an intriguing storyline there after Money in the Bank. Rusev is crushing people with his, I don't know what you call it, the recliner crusher? The Russian recliner. Okay, we're going to go with that.
The Rusev recliner, or the Russian recliner.
Yep, the Rusev recliner.
The Tommy clutch.
Yep. We also have what looks to be the end of this Natalya-Charlotte feud at Money in the Bank. Looks like it will be a tag match between Natalya, Charlotte, and Charlotte's new henchwoman, Dana Brooks. And I'm so happy to see her on the main roster finally. And Becky will most likely be supporting Natalya. Sasha Banks looks like she's returned and is continuing her feud on Main Event with Summer Rae. So the pieces are starting to come together. And a couple more people are going to be coming back from injury here soon. Neville's due back soon. Orton will probably be back late summer, early fall.
Wyatt's due back next week.
The Wyatts are due back next week. Looks like things are starting to gel. NXT's starting to rebound a little bit. We'll see what happens at TakeOver End, because that will be a very interesting show, short-term and long-term for WWE. Will Samoa Joe turn Finn Balor into Mil Muertez's throne? Will Nia Jax be able to defeat the Empress of Destruction? Not likely, but it's possible. Will American Alpha be able to keep their tag team gold against the Revival and what looks like the indie influence of Mr. Garganaro and Mr. Ciampa? And what else will be developed here? It's open season in WWE, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. Money in the Bank looks to be a really stellar show with what will probably be a very underrated match in Roman versus Seth, despite how bad the build has been thus far. And if Seth can keep his Seth Rollins-ish tendencies out of this match and Roman basically crushes him, I'll be happy. Because that's the one thing I haven't mentioned in this, is that Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins is a match I'm excited for because Roman gets to crush Seth. And that makes Izzy very happy. And we thank you all for joining us on this latest edition of Cageside Speaks. We apologize once again for the technical difficulties of some of the microphones. We'll get that sorted out on the next show or so. And tune in for, I'm not sure what exactly is next. I know that the Cruiserweight Classic show is coming up. I know Money in the Bank is coming up. We will most likely do a show about NXT TakeOver. And we will see you then. But for now, I'm 14 Fitzpatrick, and have a good day, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you for the next edition of Cageside Speaks on Cageside Seats, your one-stop stop for all things good in the world of professional wrestling. Have a good day or good night.
Take care, everybody.
Adios.
Bye.
See ya.